Not every plant belongs in your garden, no matter how beautiful it looks at the nursery or how tempting that seed packet seems. Some plants will take over your yard like uninvited guests who refuse to leave, while others attract problems you never knew existed. Today, we're talking about 11 plants that might seem like good ideas, but could turn your peaceful garden into a never-ending battle. Before we dive in, if you find this helpful, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and tap the bell so you don't miss future videos. I'm always here sharing what works and what definitely doesn't in American gardens, so let's stay connected. Let's start with something that catches every new gardener's eye: mint. Yes, that fragrant herb that smells like summer and promises fresh mojitos and homemade tea. Here's the thing nobody tells you when you're planting that innocent little pot. Mint doesn't just grow, it conquers. Those roots spread underground like they're on a mission, sending up new shoots everywhere they touch soil. Plant mint directly in your garden bed, and within a single season, you'll find it popping up 3 feet away, then 6 feet away, choking out your tomatoes and invading your flower beds. The leaves smell wonderful when you brush against them, cool and refreshing with that unmistakable menthol bite. But that charm wears thin when you're spending every weekend trying to dig out runners that multiply overnight. If you absolutely must grow mint, keep it confined in a pot with no drainage hole touching soil, or sink that pot into the ground with the rim sticking up above soil level. Even then, check it regularly because mint finds a way. Some gardeners in the Pacific Northwest have reported mint escaping through the tiniest drainage holes and establishing colonies yards away. The flavor is incredible for cooking, the scent is divine, and pollinators do love the flowers. But the aggressive spreading makes mint a plant requiring constant vigilance. Have you ever battled mint in your garden, or are you still in the honeymoon phase with this herb? Next, we need to talk about bamboo, specifically the running varieties, not the clumping types. There's a reason some municipalities have actually banned certain bamboo species. Running bamboo spreads through underground rhizomes that can travel 15 to 20 feet in a single growing season, and those rhizomes are tough, woody, and nearly impossible to kill once established. Those roots can punch through concrete driveways and foundation walls. It creates dense groves that block out all other plants, and once it crosses into your neighbor's yard, you're looking at potential legal issues and definitely some uncomfortable conversations. Throughout the South and into California, homeowners have spent thousands on bamboo removal, digging down 3 feet, trying to get every piece of rhizome. Because if you leave even a small section, it regenerates. The shoots are beautiful, swaying gracefully in the breeze with that distinctive rustling sound. And yes, some varieties grow several inches per day in ideal conditions, which sounds magical until you realize it's growing where you don't want it. If you're dreaming of a bamboo screen for privacy, stick with clumping varieties like Bombusa multiplex, which stay put and won't turn your yard into a bamboo forest. Is the aesthetic really worth the decades-long battle you might be signing up for? English ivy seems so elegant, climbing up brick walls and covering ground in those shaded spots where grass won't grow. Garden centers sell it as a solution for difficult areas, and historically, it's been used in landscapes for centuries, which gives it an air of respectability. But here's what happens with English ivy. It starts out manageable, spreading slowly in that first year, and you think you've got it under control. Then comes year 2 and 3, and suddenly it's climbing your trees, smothering native plants, and forming such dense mats that nothing else can grow through it. Those aerial roots damage building surfaces, getting under siding and into mortar, causing thousands in repair bills. Throughout the eastern states, English ivy has escaped cultivation and invaded forests, climbing high into tree canopies and eventually killing mature trees by blocking sunlight and adding dangerous weight to branches. The berries are toxic to humans, but birds eat them and spread seeds far and wide. In the Pacific Northwest, it's considered one of the most serious invasive threats to native ecosystems. The foliage stays green year-round, creating lush coverage when everything else looks dormant, but that same vigor makes it nearly impossible to eradicate once established. Pulling it up reveals stubborn roots that snap off and regenerate, and any small piece left behind starts a new colony. Native alternatives like Virginia creeper offer similar coverage without the invasive nightmare. Have you inherited an English ivy problem from a previous owner or caught it early enough to avoid disaster? Here's something that surprises people. Wisteria. Those cascading purple blooms are absolutely breathtaking, the kind of plant that makes you stop and stare when you see it draped over an arbor in full flower. The fragrance in late spring is intoxicating, sweet and heady, drawing bees and butterflies from all around. But wisteria is a thug in disguise. This vine grows with incredible strength, twisting and climbing with such force that it can crush gutters, pull down fences, and strangle trees. The trunk becomes as thick as your arm, sometimes thicker, and those twining stems wrap around anything they touch with a grip that tightens over time. If you plant wisteria near your house, you'll spend years fighting to keep it from invading roof spaces and tearing off trim. It also spreads by underground runners, popping up 10 or 15 feet from the main plant, and it seeds prolifically. Throughout the southeast, wild wisteria has taken over forests, creating such heavy canopies on trees that branches break under the weight. The plant can take 7 to 15 years to bloom from seed, which tricks people into thinking they've got a shy bloomer, when really they're nurturing a monster. If you must have wisteria, the Asian varieties are the most aggressive, so consider American wisteria instead, which is somewhat less rampant but still needs serious control. Even then, you're committing to a high-maintenance relationship with a plant that never stops trying to expand its territory. What's the most aggressive vine you've dealt with in your own garden? Now let's talk about something that seems innocent enough. Bishop's weed, also called goutweed or snow on the mountain. Those variegated leaves look charming in the garden center, bright green edged with creamy white, and it's sold as a ground cover for difficult shady areas. The problem is that bishop's weed lives up to its reputation as one of the most persistent weeds in cultivation. Once established, it spreads by aggressive rhizomes that fragment easily, meaning every time you try to dig it out, you're actually helping it spread because each broken piece becomes a new plant. It outcompetes every other plant in the area, creating solid carpets that choke out bulbs, perennials, and even established shrubs. Gardeners across the Midwest and Northeast have horror stories about inheriting bishop's weed from previous owners and spending decades trying to eliminate it. The plant tolerates almost any condition, shade or sun, wet or dry, and nothing seems to slow it down. Even persistent herbicide application often fails because those rhizomes go deep, and any piece left behind regenerates. The variegated form is slightly less aggressive than the all-green version, but that's like saying one tornado is friendlier than another. If it's already in your garden, your best bet is constant vigilance, removing every shoot you see before it can photosynthesize and strengthen those underground roots. Have you made the mistake of planting this seemingly pretty ground cover, or did someone warn you in time? Let's talk about something controversial: Bradford pear trees. For decades, these were the darling of suburban landscaping across America, planted by the thousands along streets and in front yards because they grow fast, produce clouds of white flowers in spring, and display brilliant fall color. Developers loved them because they established quickly and made new neighborhoods look mature. But here's what nobody anticipated. Bradford pears have a fatal structural flaw. Their branches grow at narrow angles from the trunk, creating weak joints that split apart in storms, ice, or even just under their own weight as the tree matures. By the time a Bradford pear reaches 15 or 20 years old, it's likely to split in half, often causing property damage when those heavy limbs come crashing down. The flowers, while showy, smell terrible, a scent people politely describe as fishy, but is actually much worse. Even more problematic, Bradford pears have escaped cultivation throughout the southeast and mid-Atlantic states, hybridizing with other ornamental pear varieties to create thorny invasive offspring that crowd out native trees in forests and fields. Several states have actually banned the sale of Bradford pears because the ecological damage is so severe. These trees produce thousands of small fruits that birds devour and spread everywhere, creating thickets of thorny pear seedlings that are incredibly difficult to remove. If you've got a Bradford pear already, consider it a ticking time bomb and make plans to replace it with a native tree like serviceberry or red bud, both of which offer beautiful spring flowers without the structural problems or invasive tendencies. Have you watched a Bradford pear self-destruct in your yard, or are you planning ahead? Here's a plant that catches people off guard: lily of the valley. Those delicate white bell-shaped flowers are so sweetly fragrant and charming, nodding on their graceful stems in late spring, and the broad green leaves make excellent ground cover in shade. Garden catalogs make it sound like the perfect solution for those difficult spots under trees where nothing else thrives. But lily of the valley spreads relentlessly through underground rhizomes called pips, and once established, it's almost impossible to remove. It forms such dense colonies that it excludes everything else, and here's the kicker. Every part of the plant is toxic, containing cardiac glycosides that can cause serious health problems if ingested. This makes it particularly dangerous if you have pets or small children who might be tempted to taste those pretty berries that form after flowering. The plant tolerates deep shade and poor soil, which sounds great, until you realize it also means you can't kill it by neglect. Some gardeners in New England have reported lily of the valley spreading into lawns, making mowing dangerous because the fragrance can cause headaches and the cut plant material releases toxic compounds. If you're tempted by those fragrant flowers, consider growing it in a large container sunk into the ground, checking regularly to make sure it hasn't jumped the barrier. Better yet, choose native alternatives like wild ginger or foam flower for shady ground cover without the toxic baggage. What's your experience with plants that turned out to be more trouble than their beauty was worth? Moving on to something that seems perfectly harmless. Chameleon plant, sometimes called a houtunia. Those colorful leaves splashed with red, cream, and green look absolutely stunning, and it's marketed as a vigorous ground cover for wet areas or along pond edges. The foliage has a distinctive scent when crushed, somewhere between citrus and cilantro, which some people find appealing. But calling chameleon plant vigorous is like calling a hurricane breezy. This plant spreads by rhizomes that travel underground at alarming speed, popping up everywhere, and those rhizomes are brittle, breaking into countless pieces when you try to remove them. Each fragment becomes a new plant, so digging it out actually makes the problem worse. It tolerates everything from full sun to shade, wet soil to relatively dry conditions, and seems to laugh at attempts at control. Gardeners from the humid South to the Pacific Northwest have declared chameleon plant their #1 garden regret, spending years trying to eradicate it from beds where it's invaded. The plant goes dormant in winter, which tricks you into thinking maybe it's died back. But come spring, those shoots emerge with renewed vigor. Even landscape fabric and thick mulch don't stop it. Those determined rhizomes just find their way around or through any barrier. Some people have resorted to repeated applications of herbicide, digging, and solarization, and still the plant persists. If you see chameleon plant at a garden center, no matter how pretty those leaves look, walk away. Your future self will thank you. Have you fallen for a plant's good looks only to regret it later? Let's address something many gardeners plant without realizing the consequences. Japanese knotweed. This tall bamboo-like plant with heart-shaped leaves looks architectural and impressive, growing 8 to 10 feet tall in a single season. But Japanese knotweed is considered one of the world's worst invasive species, and in some places it's actually illegal to plant it. The root system can extend 20 feet deep and 60 feet wide, breaking through concrete, asphalt, and even building foundations. It's spreading rapidly through the Northeast, Midwest, and Pacific Northwest. The plant regenerates from tiny fragments of root or stem, so any attempt to remove it by digging or mowing just spreads it further. Professional eradication requires years of persistent herbicide treatment or excavation of contaminated soil to depths of several feet, costing tens of thousands of dollars. If you spot Japanese knotweed on your property, contact your local extension office immediately, because early intervention is critical. Have you seen this invasive giant taking over areas near you? Now, something that surprises people: purple Loosestrife. Those magenta flower spikes are absolutely gorgeous, rising above wetland areas in summer like natural fireworks. But purple Loosestrife is an aggressive invader that has destroyed thousands of acres of native wetlands across the northern states. A single mature plant can produce over 2 million seeds per year. The plant forms dense stands that crowd out native wetland species that wildlife depend on for food and shelter. Many states have banned the sale and planting of purple Loosestrife. If you have wet areas in your garden, choose native alternatives like cardinal flower, swamp milkweed, or Joe Pye weed, all of which offer beautiful flowers and support native pollinators without the invasive behavior. What native plants have you discovered that work better than their exotic alternatives? Here's one more: English laurel, also called cherry laurel. This evergreen shrub is widely used for hedges throughout the Pacific Northwest and California because it grows quickly and creates dense year-round privacy. But English laurel has become a serious invasive problem in forests, spreading by bird-dispersed seeds and forming impenetrable thickets. The leaves contain compounds that break down into cyanide, making the plant toxic to livestock and pets. Better alternatives for evergreen screening include native plants like Pacific wax myrtle or western red cedar. Have you reconsidered any common landscaping plants after learning about their hidden problems? I saved one that might be the most controversial for last: butterfly bush. Those long flower spikes covered in butterflies are absolutely mesmerizing in summer. But here's the uncomfortable truth. While butterfly bush does attract adult butterflies, it provides no food for caterpillars, which means it's offering empty calories. Native butterflies need native host plants to complete their life cycles, and filling your garden with butterfly bush instead of those native plants actually harms butterfly populations. Butterfly bush has also become invasive in many regions, with seeds dispersing by the millions. If you want to truly help butterflies, plant native options like milkweed for monarchs, asters, and native shrubs like spicebush or viburnums that support the complete butterfly life cycle. So there you have it. 11 plants that probably don't deserve a spot in your garden despite their initial appeal. Some spread uncontrollably, some cause structural damage, and others harm native ecosystems. Gardening is about making smart choices that create beauty without creating problems for yourself or the environment. Every plant we choose is a vote for the kind of landscape we want to see. Which of these problem plants have you encountered? Or better yet, which have you successfully avoided? Drop your thoughts in the comments because I love hearing your stories. If this video helped you dodge a gardening bullet, share it with a fellow gardener who might be tempted by one of these troublemakers. And don't forget to subscribe for more practical advice. Happy gardening, and remember, sometimes the best thing you can plant is nothing at all.